Chair.
Okay, thanks.
And we're good, we're live.
Thanks, Carl. Good morning, all committee members and staff. It's a beautiful fall day out there, and we should enjoy this weather. Telling Rhonda that we've always said if we don't have a frost before Spencerville Fair, we're good for another 6 weeks. And Spencerville Fair is this weekend, so I think we're good for another 6. Who's that just joined?
Not sure. Okay, we'll do roll call maybe before we start in. Can whoever just joined by phone please identify themselves? Okay, I'll do roll call maybe, okay, Mr. Chair, and then
very good.
We can figure out who our last attendee is. So I have joining us right now Francois Allard, Marie Shabat, Dorothy Hamilton, Elizabeth Holmes, Steve Hunter, Murray Inch. Our chair, Glenn Mackey, is here with me. I believe Dave Robertson is on the phone. I see his name. Francois St. Amour, Doug Thompson, and Bill Smurl. If I missed anyone, can you please let me know now? Okay, that is roll call, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and we do have a quorum.
Yes.
So we'll proceed with the agenda. First is the approval of the Forestry Committee agenda. And there's no supplemental today?
There is not.
Okay. So could I have a approval of the agenda? That's for
Doug Thompson.
Doug Thompson. Thank you. Seconder? Bill Smurl. Thanks very much. Next is declaration of conflict of interest and general nature thereof. If we have anyone, please speak up. Seeing no one, thank you very much. We'll move on then to the S&C forestry updates. That's by the staff.
Steve, I think that's maybe your line giving us a bit of feedback. I'm not sure if you're muted or not. Oops. There we go. And Kara's up first.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. So I just wanted to do a little recap of our tree planting season that we just had this past spring. It was our record year, as you probably all know, and we had a very long tree planting season, but it went well overall. So you can see on the screen, for those who have access to a computer or a smartphone, the totals for the different projects. So of course, the biggest one was for the contract planting, which was done by Brinkman Reforestation. And South Nation staff had a whole bunch of trees that they planted as well, which they did very, very well with lots of work and tired eyes in the morning, but we got it done. Now for next year, we're actually looking at a very similar year as tree numbers total. So we're estimating about 120,000 trees for the 50 million tree program. That is including partly the refill. So we're expecting to have lots of refill next spring due to the bad springs that we had, the droughts that we had. So we haven't, like I said, we haven't done the survival assessments yet. We don't have any idea yet of the refill numbers, but we are expecting really high amounts of refill just because of how bad the springs and the summers have been lately. Of course, the Rose Forest has reserved lots of trees again for next year, and we're looking forward to doing some underplanting in the Rose Forest. Over-the-counter orders will be coming in up until February 1st. That's our deadline for tree orders for the over-the-counter. So if you guys have any orders, make sure to contact me before February 1st. And then we're also looking at another municipal tree giveaway next spring as well. So we'll have trees reserved for that. So at this point, right now, we have 195,000 trees reserved, but that number will go up definitely because, like I said, the refill numbers aren't completed yet. And then the next slide. So in regards to the tree risk assessments, we have been doing many of those again this year, although it is much less work because it's mostly reassessments. So this year we did 7 conservation area that we assessed, with a total of 834 trees to be removed. So yes, it seems quite high, but majority of these trees are located within the J. Henry Tweed conservation area, which hasn't been tended to for quite a while. Especially, I mean, that statement is not very true. I mean, we did lots of cutting for the ash trees in the previous years, but there's still lots to do in there regarding the tree risk assessment of the trees along the trail. And for that park, we did it a little bit differently. We assessed all ashes within the whole park, so not along only the trails. So all ashes within the park will be dealt with. So in totals, we're of the total trees that we're removing, 78% of these are ash trees, and the rest of them, it's various other species that need to be tended to. But just to give you an idea in numbers, there are 598 trees identified in Henry Tweed to be removed, and every other park is less than 100. And yeah, so it seems big, but it's not too bad.
Any questions of Caroline? If not, thank you very much. I think the next one is Chris.
So Chris just messaged, can you get off mute now, Chris? I think you're having problems with your microphone. Not sure if we have. Might have lost Chris temporarily. I can cover this one for him. We once again are hosting an event at the Healing Place. So you may recall last September on our South Nation property just north of Shanley, right on County Road 22, we did plant with our partners from Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, Plenty Canada, Algonquins of Pikwakanagan, the Algonquins of Shabatabajawan, Ontario Power Generation and Forest Ontario created the Healing Place. On October the 14th, we are hosting another event, remembering the children, of course, reflecting upon the recent discoveries from the residential school system. We are hoping to be able to host a larger crowd this year. You may recall last year, at the last minute, we had to downsize because of restrictions on gathering numbers. So we had about 60 to 70 people interested, but we had to go down to about 25 to meet the new guidelines. So we're still hoping for a larger event this year, but we'll continue to monitor the pandemic situation and we'll need to adjust accordingly. So at this present time, we are allowed to gather up to 100 people. So we're kind of hoping that that number will stay where it is and we'll be able to host more folks for the October 14th event. So invitations will be coming out and there will be a registration requirement as last year. So any questions on that, you can talk to Chris or myself.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Chris, were you able to get connected? I saw your message come up, but unfortunately I can't read it on the screen. I'm too far away. Pat, can you cover this one for Chris?
I can.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Part of the work we've been doing on the county forest this year has been to clean up some of our landings from the winter's harvest operation. This was done on SDG 11, 12, 13, 14, which is part of the Warwick Forest. That was done early spring. The SDG 90, where we did a spruce harvest north of Dalkeith. We didn't get there until later on in the summer. This just shows some of the work that was done. We were clearing up some of the weeds and logging slash that was left on the landing in preparation for seeding it with a grass clover mix.
Thanks, Pat. Any questions of Pat?
We've also been working on the county forest 5-year operating plan. This work started last year. We've visited over 25 properties that will be included within the draft allocation. On the next slide, there is a map showing the forest values map of the counties. These are all the natural heritage values that we consider when planning our forest operations. I believe there's another map. And this is the way we depict our forest allocation for the next 5-year operating period. We identify the properties, visit them, ensure that review any values that are on the properties, and then schedule the harvest over the next 5 years.
I have uploaded copies of both these maps onto your members page. So if you're interested in providing feedback to Martin, you can find copies of it there. It'll be easier for you to read. If you have any issues accessing the members page, reach out to Diane. She can help get you connected.
I have a question or two.
Go ahead. Dorothy, I believe.
Yep. Just a couple. The work that Allison did on the natural heritage systems, and possibly through other discussions, the recalculation of significant forests. Is any of that going to be included in an update of the values map down the road? Because this values map says it's good for 2022 to 2026, and some of this work will occur during that time.
Yes, it will. When that report is finally available, this will be updated. We also update our high conservation values report on an annual basis. So as new information comes in from our tree marking operations and any other studies that are going on related to the county forest, we update our forest values list on an annual basis. This is also published on the SDG website and can be viewed there.
Okay, it's just as I say, I know you're working on the floodplain mapping, and as I say, the one that's already been done with the natural heritage systems, which eventually will be put into, I guess, the county OP. And as I say, we need to recalculate significant woodlands somewhere down the road. So I just wanted to make sure this map would be updated to reflect that.
Yeah, we also have input into producing that new natural heritage system, and we will be aware of it.
I have a question. I seem to be incapable of enlarging this map and still be in focus. Am I the only one who has a problem with this?
So the best way to zoom in on the map is to go to the copy that I placed on the members website page. It's there as a PDF. That'll allow you to zoom in a clearer picture. On the screen here, it won't come out very clear for you. So go to the members page on our website, and if you need login assistance, Diane can give you a hand with that.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Actually, you sent all these slides out as a separate
I sent
email?
Yes, I sent the slide deck. However, they're pasted as a picture into the slides. That's why the resolution is not great. So again, the best place to go is the PDF version on the members page.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, staff, for the updates. The next item on the agenda is the roundtable discussion, community engagement. Have we had any community engagement over the last hot summer that we've experienced? I guess we must all be staying home in our own little bubbles.
Hi, Pat, it's Bill.
Bill, did you have a question?
No, yes, sort of, but I had a comment. It's a reminder to all people on the committee that this is the last meeting where you can effectively have suggestions or input that might affect the budget for next year. Because over the next couple of months, we'll be working hard, the staff will be working hard and preparing and working on budget. And each year, or many years, we've talked about we didn't have the opportunity to put input or give input or offer suggestions about other thoughts or other areas we might want to be involved with or take advantage of. And so I'm suggesting that today or in the next couple of days is your opportunity to have input for the budget that will be prepared over the next bit. Perhaps Rhonda would have a further comment.
Yes, thank you, Bill. So again, Pat did present to you at the last meeting the draft 2022 work plan. So if you want to refresh on what's proposed for next year, you can find that in your June committee package. If you don't have your email handy, a copy of that package is also uploaded onto the members page or available on our website as well. So take a look back to the June meeting and provide any comments and feedback to Pat or myself again as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Tuning fork.
It's Murray's mic that's causing feedback. I just muted it. Maybe you want to try again, but I'm not sure what the problem is there.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. No.
We're having difficulty with your mic, Murray.
Murray, can you type your question into the comment box? It's a little bubble at the top, and perhaps we can read it.
It's Dorothy here. I noticed Murray is listed twice on your menu, so he may have to sign off once. Maybe that will get rid of the echo.
Oh, yes, that's true. So you are signed in twice, Murray. I'm not sure which is the good one, but you're in twice. That might be causing the feedback at your end. So perhaps if you can sign off one of your logins, Murray, and then try your question again, we can maybe keep going while we're waiting for Murray to sort that out.
Is there anyone else that had comments, involvement, engagement in the community?
Hello,
Seeing
it's
none?
Francois.
Okay, Francois. Go ahead. Yes, Francois.
Just a comment. So I reside in the Rockland community and in St. Pascal. Just want to let you know that quite a few people know I'm on the committee. And when they had heard about the tree planting given away by the municipality, quite a few went and got trees and were very happy with what the conservation does. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
And we are hoping again next spring to work with our municipal partners and another municipal tree giveaway. So that will be in our draft budget for 2022.
Mr. Chair, it's Bill again. May I have another comment?
Go ahead.
One of the things I've done is talk with my council and talked with various peoples in the community about the number of dead ash trees along the road and asking if the council or the United Counties of SD&G that I'm most familiar with have had any plans to work with anyone to, number one, get rid of some of these trees before they become a hazard and take out lines or fall on somebody driving along the road and considering replanting. I think all of us should be concerned and be thinking of what might be done with them, because we sure have a lot of dead ash and a few even dead elm yet out. So that's just a thought for what you might want to consider.
Thank you. I believe up in Leeds and Grenville, I see a lot of ash trees that have been cut along the county road, so they may have taken that approach, but I'm not sure about any plans for replanting.
So just a reminder, we do partner with United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry on a roadside tree program. So it's not specifically targeted to ash, but we are every fall planting different locations along the county roads. Carol will be taking care of that later on this month. So we work with the municipal garages to find out where the problem areas are, where they could benefit from some tree buffers, and that partnership's been ongoing for probably close to a decade now with funding from the county. So that is going ahead in SD&G, although not specifically targeted ash, but may help replace some of the trees that do need to come down.
Okay, thank you. Murray, have you managed to clear up your system there?
I think so.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we're talking about community engagement, that Oak Valley was actively used by the community over the summer from a group that were teaching dog obedience to musicians and others who came out. And so the park was actively used, and the community really appreciated having access to that facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Seeing no more questions or comments, we'll go to number 6, the approval of the Forestry Committee meeting minutes of June the 1st.
So they are included in your package on pages 3 to 7.
Are there any errors or corrections that have been noticed? Seeing none, then I need a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the meeting of June the 1st.
See Maurice?
Maurice moved.
Approve, Dorothy.
Dorothy seconded. I'm not going to ask all in favor. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion's approved. Thank you very much. Business arising for the minutes.
I didn't have anything noted unless there's a question from the committee following up on the minutes.
I see there's a number of things further on in the agenda that would actually follow nicely with the minutes. Seeing none, we'll move to number 8, new business, S&C Forest Administration and Operations. We'll hear the report from Pat on page 8, and then we'll move or ask for a mover and a seconder. First of all, go ahead, Pat.
So you're still muted, Pat.
Sorry, I can't move my cursor fast enough. I'm just opening my report here. Bear with me. Okay, sorry for the delay, everyone. My computer's a little slow this morning, as I am too. In terms of forest administration, it's been a fairly busy year in terms of acquisitions. We've added nearly 100 acres to the S&C forest. Particular one property added 99 acres. It was S&C, which is now S&C 170. It's part of the Dickens Creek wetland. up in Alfred, Plantagenet. We do have a number of properties, 6 in total, that we're considering and working towards acquiring, and it'll bring another over 300 acres to the forest as well. We've also added 33 acres to the 2021 Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program plan. We've updated some of the civic addressing on our properties where we have public access points, particularly SNC 164, which is the healing place just east of Spencerville. Its new civic address is 8040 County Road 22. In terms of forest certification, the FSC annual reports covering the period from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 was submitted earlier this year. We've also submitted the High Conservation Values Report for this year. We did attend FSC internal audits that were conducted by the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, both in January and August of this year. In terms of forest operations, complaints, we did have one complaint concerning hazard trees that are along the boundary between the SNC forest and a private lot down in South Dundas. Those trees were addressed and removed. In terms of restoration, we have 10 acres being restored in North Stormont. These were the result of an encroachment, and the costs of those operations are being covered by the encroacher, and the final restoration of the property will occur with spring planting in 2022. Thinning was completed on a parcel in North Stormont, SN 1617, located just east of Gravel Hill. We have thinning operations pending in SNC 29, SNC 53, SNC 30, SNC 75, and SNC 145 for this year. In June of this year, the Board of Directors awarded a contract for thinning in SNC 61. This is currently suspended. The subsequent contractor has had some insurance issue, and we cannot issue the award of the tender. And we will be addressing that one in the near future. We do have a fall tree plant scheduled on SNC 7 in South Dundas. It's 5,000 seedlings, and this was is occurring as a result of a successful application to the 2 billion tree program.
Thank you, Pat. Do we have any questions of Pat? Seeing none, are we ready for the question?
Need a mover and seconder, Mr. Chair.
Pardon?
Need a mover and seconder?
Yes. So the recommendation is the Forestry Committee receive and file the update on SNC Forest Administration and Operations. Mover and seconder, please.
So moved. Doug Tom.
Bill will second, and I have a comment, Pat.
Okay, so it's moved by
I had Francois first.
Francois and seconded by Bill, I believe. And you had a question, Francois?
No, it was Bill.
Oh, it's Bill? Go ahead with the question, Bill.
It wasn't a question, it was a comment. Re the encroachment issue, I want to say a special thank you and lots of compliments to the staff for the extra work they did in smoothing this over and making it successfully and having successful achievement to the results that we were able to put together. So I just want to say that the staff did a super job in working towards the success of this program. Thank you.
Thank you to the staff. I think I was sitting on the board when that started years ago. So we have the mover and seconder. Opposed, if any? Seeing none, passed. Thank you very much. The next is the S&C, the SDG County Forest verbal from Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A similar report as to the activities on the SNC Forest. Unfortunately, many of us were on holidays over the past little while and were unable to prepare a written report. But in terms of the SDG Forest, in terms of administration, the county is quite active in acquiring new property as well. They've added one new property just east of Alexandria, a portion of tolerant hardwood forest, which is about 50 acres in size. And there are two additional property acquisitions in progress for the county. In terms of complaints, we did have one recent complaint on the SDNG County Forest, which was in relation to an abandoned well on one of the compartments. This was addressed in due course, and it has since been decommissioned properly by a licensed contractor. There are currently no harvest operations on the SDG County Forest. We're at the end of our 5-year operating plan. All operations have been complete, save one, which is located near the village of Maxville. And that is to do to poor markets for hardwoods. We do have a maple tapping operation just setting up its infrastructure. This is the first commercial tapping operation on the county forest, and we're looking forward to that. As I said before, both landings from this past winter's operations have been cleaned up and seeded. We do have some site preparation taking place on a county forest property near Gravel Hill. This is in preparation for future underplanting of a white pine shelterwood cut that was recently completed. In terms of FSC, like the SNC Forest, we were subject to audit this past year internally, and we've since sent in all the annual reporting that's required under that program.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions of Pat?
Mr. Chair, we receiving the file for that verbal report?
We don't have anything to file. We still do. So the recommendation is that we receive and file the SDG County Forest verbal report from Pat. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please?
François, hello.
That's why. Opposed, if any? Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you, Pat. The next update is funding submissions, and it was prepared by Naomi, but I believe Rhonda here.
Actually, we have OPG Regional Biodiversity Program up first.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chair.
I skipped one. Yes, the OPG Regional Biodiversity Program, and that's Michelle.
Might not have Michelle on this morning. Pat, are you okay to provide that update?
Yes, we did receive funding under the OPG Regional Biodiversity Program. It was for 2021, 2022, and 2023. It involved doing some site restoration on several of our properties, invasive species control, and the subsequent restorations of the site. It provided funding for the ash tree removal in the J. Henry Tweed conservation area and restoration of the adjacent watercourse. These projects are underway. The invasive species control on the Garland Side Road property is taking place this week, and the treatment of the stumps will be conducted at the same time. The tender for the work in J. Henry Tweed is being prepared and will be issued in the near future. And the work will be conducted over the winter time when the park is in a dormant condition, and this will also minimize the impacts on the site and the trail itself when in the winter time.
Thanks, Pat. I can also just add for your information that we do have someone from the Regional Biodiversity Program actually visiting us this month. So Ashley, who's taken over for our friend Jerry McKenna, who retired last summer. So Ashley will be coming out, visit a couple of the sites with us on the 14th of September. So it'll be a chance for her to see some of the projects that program is funding for herself.
Very good. Do we have any questions? Read this report. Seeing none, the recommendation is the Forestry Committee receive and file the OPG Regional Biodiversity Program update. A mover and a seconder, please.
Doug Thompson.
Doug Thompson and Francois. Opposed, if any? Seeing none, now we'll move on to the funding submissions. Report prepared by Naomi, and the presentation is going to be by Rhonda. And Rhonda, I wonder, when we go through and the programs that have been approved, could you tell us what the status is, whether
Sure.
they're complete or not, or
Yes.
underway?
So the report is on page 11 in your agenda package, and we bring this report regularly to the Fish and Wildlife Committee, and I thought that this group would be interested in it as well. So this is a summary of what we've applied for. I put December in there because we do have several large National Disaster Mitigation Program grants that were applied for just before Christmas, but we didn't receive approval until this year, so I wanted to make sure we captured them. So at the top of the table, we did submit 5 funding applications to the National Disaster Mitigation Intake 6. So this is the 6th time that program's been open for applications. We were successful on 3 of them. So the Bear Brook and Tributaries Hazard Mapping is a floodplain mapping project. That one is currently underway. The staff of the engineering team right now are doing a lot of the field working and modeling associated with that work to eventually provide updated floodplain maps on the Bear Brook and some of the major tributaries associated to the Bear Brook. So that was the 265,747 approved through the NDMP, or National Disaster Mitigation Program. Ottawa River, I should say too, that Bear Brook one is in partnership with the City of Ottawa, so they are providing part of the 50% matching funding towards that. Ottawa River Flood Hazard Mapping is another floodplain mapping project in partnership with United Counties of Prescott-Russell. Again, updating floodplain mapping along the Ottawa River. We again are in the middle of field data collection and modeling to eventually update the floodplain maps along a section of the Ottawa River in United Counties of Prescott-Russell. That one was approved for $170,056 through NDMP. And the third one that was approved, the Flood Risk Assessment Partnership, is actually a partnership between South Nation Conservation, Rideau Valley Conservation, and Mississippi Conservation to do a flood risk assessment. So to look at all of our streams, where we have floodplain mapping, where we don't, what areas should be prioritized for future floodplain, either updates or new mapping. So that is in progress. We've recently secured a consultant to help us with a portion of that work. So they have started the initial work on that. And then in 2022, we will produce a 10-year plan for floodplain mapping for South Nation as a result of that project. And that one was approved for $85,028. The data acquisition support for Eastern Ontario flood risk assessment was a large application, just under 900,000. That was essentially for the acquisition of LiDAR, so the light reflecting that we use for elevation, very precise elevations from that work. Unfortunately, it was not approved through NDMP, but we do have a successful partnership that is moving forward with that project. So we have 6 conservation authorities and about 50 municipalities in Eastern Ontario that have signed on, and we will begin acquisition this fall and next year. So that should result in complete LiDAR coverage for most of Eastern Ontario within those 6 conservation authorities. So that's great news. Even though we didn't receive the funding, we have active partnerships with all the conservation authorities and those participating municipalities. And then the final project was a smaller one, flood forecasting warning improvements in the South Nation watershed. Sorry, that was the $85,000 request. That was for additional monitoring equipment to support our flood forecasting warning and low water response. And unfortunately, it was not approved, but we do have plans to move forward with some additional equipment installation this year as well. The Grasslands Ontario Grassland Stewardship Initiative was approved for just under $18,000. That is grassland habitat enhancements on some of our project sites. That is has not, I believe, started yet, Pat, but the work is, the plan has started, but the actual work has not.
It has started. Part of the grant was for the development of a stewardship plan for the property. The property is SNC 164 near Spencerville. Some of you may recall when we acquired that property, it was acquired under the Ecological Gifts Program. The grassland portions of the property are habitat for 2 endangered species, eastern meadowlark and bobolink. And basically the background data collection for the property is currently ongoing, and the crop management plan will be developed early in the fall. We are working with about 12 scientists from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to develop that plan, and they have been out on the property doing the assessments for us, and have monitoring equipment on site.
Thanks, Pat. Flipping to page 12 at the top, Ontario Power Generation. So there was another call for proposals that was issued in January of this year. We did submit another 3-year proposal. We were successful for funding smaller amounts in year 1 and year 2, which is 2021 and 22, because we already have an active agreement, as Pat just mentioned in the previous report, for some work at Tweed, Garland, and Gamble side roads. So 5,000 each for this year and next year, and then 50,000 for 2023, which is actually some work at Oak Valley to stabilize the shoreline. So we're hoping at least to start the project with project designs, and we're actively looking for matching funding to actually be able to do implementation of that erosion control design work. Habitat Stewardship Program, the forest bird monitoring was approved for 6,000. Pat, a quick update on that one.
Correction on that, it's still pending.
Pending, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was to purchase automatic recording units so that we could monitor bird activity in the forest. We place the monitors out in the forest and let the recorders do their work, and then analyze them over the winter months as to what species we're hearing, targeting at-risk species.
We did submit to Eco Action Community Funding Program, the Oak Valley Restoration Project. Unfortunately, it was not approved, but again, we continue to look for matching funds to further the funding we have already approved under the OPG for year 2023. We submitted a Smart Great Lakes mini grant program, basically for monitoring equipment to establish a monitoring site along the St. Lawrence River. Unfortunately, that one was not approved. Nature Fund Canada was a request for implementation of South Nation land strategy securement. Pat, that one was denied. Can you give us just a quick summary of that one?
Yes, it was to acquire several properties in the Dickinson Creek wetland complex in Alfred Plantagenet. We applied directly to the Canada Nature Fund, but unfortunately we weren't successful. Just as an aside, though, I did include the properties on a submission through Conservation on Ontario for federal funds, and they notified us earlier this year that they've been successful. So we're just working out details on that agreement, and we'll update the committee in November on any success that we have.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
The 2 billion tree program, Pat mentioned during the SNC operations update. So again, we were approved for just under 17,000 for planting on SNC 7, which will occur this fall. Stormont Dundas and Glengarry Regional Tourism Grant was a bridge replacement. Unfortunately, it was not approved. It was a small grant for 5,000. I believe the bridge replacement was proposed for Warwick. Pat, does that sound right? I don't recall offhand. I'm going to double check for Dorothy with John when he gets back, but I think it was Warwick.
That could be.
We also applied to the Rural Economic Development Program for shoreline restoration and washroom replacements at some of our parks for $35,500. Unfortunately, that one was not approved. We partnered with Ducks Unlimited Canada. They were submitting a large proposal to the federal government for wetland restoration. They came to us to ask if we had potential sites, which we did. So they have been approved. So we've just recently entered into a 3-year agreement with Ducks Unlimited Canada for $375,000 over that 3 years to restore wetland habitat across the South Nation jurisdiction. The bottom of page 12, apologies, it's a repeat. I missed it, it's a duplication, so you can just stroke out that bottom one. We already covered it. And if we flip to page 13, UCPR Waterfront Tourism Development Fund was for dock improvements at St. Albert Park in St. Albert. That one was approved for 4,000. Fisheries and Oceans Canada, classification of unrated municipal drains. Each year there is a pot of funding. The conservation authorities can apply to access to actually go out and rate municipal drains. This allows the drain to have a classification and speeds up the process for drainage superintendents when they're looking to do work. So we were approved for 8,800, and actually I believe the crews were just out last week or are out this week to do that work. The Climate Action Awareness Fund was a SNC Forest Inventory and Carbon Model expression of interest that was submitted in June. It was denied. I'll let Pat explain kind of the game plan for that one moving forward and what that one entailed.
Yeah, basically we were capitalizing on our investment in the LiDAR that's being acquired for the much of Eastern Ontario, and LiDAR can be used for determining forest inventories, and there was a test of that methodology done in Larose Forest using the 2014 LiDAR that was flown. We did submit a expression of interest to apply, but were denied. We had a small group of people who had committed in Eastern Ontario, but since that time, we've heard of a larger initiative to complete forest inventory work across Southern Ontario, and with a much larger group of stakeholders. And we're going to send a request to the federal government to reconsider our expression of interest based on the number of stakeholders across Southern Ontario that would benefit from such an initiative.
Thanks, Pat. So the Ontario Community Environmental Fund, we had submitted an application for the East York Creek Shoreline Stabilization, which is in Russell Township. Unfortunately, that one was not approved. Trees Canada National Greening Program, we have a submission that went in for planting of about 30,000 seedlings to help support our 2022 spring tree plant. Request is just under 80,000. We are still waiting to hear back from that program. We had recently been approved for an application that was actually submitted last summer in June of 2020. The Employment and Social Development Canada just approved $100,000 for accessible washrooms in S&C conservation areas. So that just shows sometimes there is a delay between actual funding applications and approval dates. So it took about a year, but we got the funding, so that's great news. Canadian Wildlife Federation pollinator habitat creation, that one was approved for 14,000. That is, I believe, Pat, at the new Mill Run conservation area in Augusta that's being developed. That's
Yes.
right. So that one will be going ahead shortly. We did have some student applications that went in as well to Equal Canada, so internship programs to help fund our student complements and recent grads that we have working for us. So we did apply this spring and were approved for 20,000. And we have an application pending for for land acquisition from the La Flèche Wetland Trust Fund of 250,000. I don't know if you want to make a comment on that one as well.
It's part of the Dickinson Creek wetland application.
Thanks, Pat. So the summary at the bottom, my numbers are going to be a little bit off, given that I have one duplication and we have one marked approved instead of pending. But it'll give you a close idea of kind of where we stand as far as submissions. So there are actually 3 that are pending for around 325,000. There are 12 submissions that were approved for about 1.2 million. And then currently we have 6 submissions that were denied for about 1.7, keeping in mind that 2 of those 6 applications account for about 1.3 million in funding. So that's a large land acquisition request, as well as that $900,000 LiDAR project, which again is proceeding without external funding, but with partner contributions instead. So that's a quick snapshot of kind of what we've been up to as far as fundraising and grant applications this year. We also do, there is another one that's open for the disaster mitigation and adaptation fund, which is due in October. So that's another large grant from the federal government that we're looking at potentially with another partnership with Eastern Ontario Conservation Authorities. So we are still in the very beginning stages of reviewing what's eligible under that grant and having conversations with our neighboring conservation authorities to see about potentially a joint submission under that program. And we have grants that kind of pop up here and there throughout the year, so staff are always keeping an eye out for ones that may be suitable for the work that we do. So thought you might be interested to see the summary. We can bring this back sort of regularly to give you a snapshot of where things are at, as we do with the Fish and Wildlife Committee.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate staff on a very active year. COVID-19 doesn't seem to hurt you people at all. There's a lot of work gone in here and a lot of work to be done as a result of gaining these approvals. Do we have any questions of Rhonda or Pat on this submission?
It's François. In comparison to the previous years, how does it look like in approval?
I would say it's comparable. We've been very successful on previous National Disaster Mitigation Program submissions. So under intake 5, we actually had 5 projects approved. We had about 3 or 4 under the previous one, so that's fairly consistent as far as that goes. We have some similar grants that are approved kind of year to year, and then we have new ones that have come up that we haven't applied for in the past. So I would say it's comparable for as far as applications out and success rate. And then typically what we will do is follow up with a funder to find out if we're not approved, why, and are there things that we can do to improve our submission. Sometimes it's just that they're overwhelmed and they don't have enough to meet the demand. Other times there may be ways that we can tweak proposals to actually better fit their objectives. So we do that follow up where we can and make improvements for the kind of the next year's submission.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, it's Bill. May I make a comment and ask some questions?
Certainly. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. First of all, I would like to follow through on your comments and say a special thank you to our staff that has the knowledge and the understanding and the wherewithal to not only know where to apply, but to find places to apply to get all sorts of dollars that supplement our budget. And in my looking over the different authorities across Ontario, I don't think there's any authority that gets more support from the community than does ours. And so special compliments to the staff for those. The questions I have are, and I'm going to ask 2 or 3 of them, and then I'll come back on if you need me, but getting on and off is a problem here. When we have the denials, do they give reasons for it? And does that give us an opportunity to reapply at a later time, or is it a one-time thing that's finished? Second question, I noticed the bridges. Are those bridges are walks, etc.? Because applying for support for building bridges seemed to be a little different. And the other application about the expanding and having the washrooms, I wondered if there was any chance of still following through on that one. And I think I heard you say something about Oak Valley. We didn't get support for one of the applications, but I think I heard you say some other support came in. May I leave you with those?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the denied projects. So depending on the funding program, they don't always give a lot of detail on why you're denied. Most of the time it says, thank you for your applications. We had an overwhelming number. So sometimes it's just they have more applications than available funding, but staff do follow up with the programs when we can actually get in contact with one of their representatives to find out what we can do better next time. So we have done that and submitted or resubmitted in future intakes for a number of different projects. So that's where the denied ones are. The bridge replacement, I had Phil confirm for me, thanks Phil, that it was Warwick. So that would be on one of our trails. So it would be one of the bridges on the trails in Warwick. So that's why it's a smaller amount. Most of those grants for the tourism are related to our parks and trails. So that's kind of where we target the work there. So it helps support some small infrastructure work. I believe the third question was on Oak Valley. So we were not successful under the Eco Action funding application that was submitted in March. But we were successful for year 3 of the new Ontario Power Generation Regional Biodiversity Program funding. So we do have $50,000 secured for 2023, which we are actively looking to match that funding with any applications that would be a fit for that project. So we will continue to resubmit to try and increase the budget that's available for restoration work at Oak Valley. But at the present time, we have $50,000 committed, and are looking to at least double that value if we can before 2023.
I think there was also a question re the washrooms.
Oh, the washrooms, yes, thank you. So we were successful, Bill, under the federal application. So on page 13, the 4th from the bottom. So we did receive $100,000 on an application that was actually made in June of 2020. So they just approved it in July of this year. So that $100,000 was successful. The smaller amount, I'm just looking for it on the list. We had a smaller amount that was not approved, which was $35,350 for a combination of shoreline restoration and a washroom replacement. So one unsuccessful, but the successful one was actually more funding. So $100,000 approved for that.
Here. Any other questions? Comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Pat, you mentioned that the pollinator habitat creation, that was in Augusta Township, and where was the location again?
That's at the new park, the Mill Run Conservation Area on McRae Road.
Okay.
So that's our new property that was acquired just in the last year. Yeah.
Thanks, Pat. No further questions. The recommendation is the Forestry Committee receive and file the grant submissions update. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
Dorothy, I'll move.
Dorothy moved. Seconder? Murray. Thanks very much. And Doug Thompson, I believe, is leaving. You had to leave at 11 o'clock.
Yes. Yes, so that brings us to the end of our reports, Mr. Chair.
That brings us to the end of the reports. There's no supplemental agenda.
Nope.
The upcoming events, the Healing Place, Remembering the Children, October the 14th, 2021. Do we have any further upcoming events that anyone would like to mention?
It's Dorothy here. I have two events. The first one occurs here September 25th and 26th. It's actually being put on by the Eastern section of the maple syrup producers. It will be held in Kentville at the Agroforestry Center. They hope to have a pancake breakfast. They're still checking on whether they can do that or not. They'll also be having tours of the facility and of the wood lot. And at 1 o'clock on Monday, on Saturday, I should say, because the event is Saturday and Sunday, 25th and 26th. There will be a special dedication of the forest to Peter Winsink. I think many people know Peter from his days with both the ministry and Domtar and also working in Kentville. And they're going to name the forest after him. And as I say, the event covers both days, and as I say, tours of the forest both days. So wanted just to mention that one. And then on October 23rd, my chapter, the SD&G chapter, will be holding a woodlot tour from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. At John Ferguson's woodlot. John lives in South Glengarry. He's just off of County Road 34. And we'll be doing a tour of his woodlot, looking at various thinnings and of a plantation, a pine plantation that was affected by the ice storm, and how he's underplanting it now with oak. And there'll be also the point is to show how he though he's an agricultural into agricultural production and whatnot. How he uses his agricultural equipment to do the forest management of his woodlot. So that's October 23rd, and pre-registration is required. I can send information on that one in, and hopefully it can be posted on the website. But it will be on the Ontario Woodlot Association website shortly as well. Actually, both events will.
Great, Dorothy. If you can send them my way, I'll make sure we get them posted on our event calendar.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's Murray Inch. I anticipate the fall field day for Oak Valley Pioneer Park will be the 16th of October. We've got to confirm that, but that's tentative, and I just put it on the record for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Murray. Anyone else? Seeing none. The date of the next meeting would be November 30th, 2021, and I believe it would be 10 o'clock in the morning.
It will be a 10 a.m. start. At this point, we'll say if anything changes, we'll let you know.
There's nothing else. I asked for movement of adjournment. Need a mover? Francois? Thank you. And we don't need a seconder for that. Thanks very much for coming out, and enjoy the rest of the day and the fall, and we'll see everyone in November the 30th. Bill. Okay. Thanks very much.
Take care, everyone.